Have you ever wondered how far someone can go in search of power? How many lives can be destroyed by a single person thirsty for control? The story we are going to explore today will shock you, I guarantee it. Imagine a queen so powerful she thought she could challenge even the gods. A woman who didn't hesitate to manipulate, betray, and even kill to maintain her rule. Sounds like a movie plot, doesn't it? But it's real, and it happened thousands of years ago. The story of Jezebel in the Bible is a cautionary tale that echoes through the centuries. In the church of Thyatira, mentioned in the book of Revelation, her malignant influence is compared to that of a false prophetess. This analogy is not by chance, for just like Jezebel in the Old Testament, this figure in Thyatira led people astray. She seduced them into idolatrous and immoral practices, diverting them from the right path. Jezebel's impact was devastating, shaking the foundations of an entire people's faith. She was not just a queen, but a corrupting force who used her position of power to manipulate and control. Her charisma and cunning were powerful weapons, capable of influencing even those who should have been the strongest in their faith. The mention of Jezebel in Revelation is not an isolated historical detail, but a timeless warning. She represents the persistent temptation to abandon moral principles in exchange for immediate gains. In our age of social media and digital influencers, this lesson takes on new relevance, showing how influence can be used for nefarious purposes. Jezebel's case illustrates the dangers of misused power and corrupted influence. Her story serves as a mirror to examine the power structures in our own society. Who are the modern Jezebels using their influence to divert people from ethical and moral values? Jezebel's narrative invites us to a deeper examination of the motivations behind human actions. It shows how the quest for power and control can lead to the destruction of not just the individual, but an entire community. It's a vivid reminder that individual choices have collective consequences. Jezebel's legacy also highlights the importance of resisting negative influences. There were those who stood firm in their convictions, even in the face of pressure and persecution. These figures of resistance are as crucial to the narrative as Jezebel herself, showing that it is possible to maintain integrity even in adverse circumstances. Jezebel's story reminds us of the cyclical nature of power and corruption. Throughout history, we see similar patterns repeating, with leaders using their influence to manipulate and control. Recognizing these patterns is the first step to avoid falling into the same traps. Finally, Jezebel's narrative serves as a call for constant vigilance. It shows us that corruption can infiltrate the most unlikely places, including religious institutions and power structures that should protect and guide. The story teaches us to always be alert, ready to identify and resist harmful influences. The divine judgment that fell upon Jezebel was a direct response to her wicked and manipulative actions. Among her most notorious crimes was the murder of Naboth, an act of cruelty and greed that sealed her fate. Naboth's vineyard, which King Ahab coveted, became the scene of one of the most infamous episodes in biblical history. This incident not only revealed Jezebel's corrupt nature, but also triggered a series of events leading to her downfall. The curse pronounced by the prophet Elijah was not only against Jezebel, but extended to her entire family. It was a divine decree making it clear that her actions would not go unpunished. Elijah's prophecy against Jezebel was specific and graphic, predicting a violent and humiliating death. This prediction was not just an act of divine vengeance, but a sign for all the people of Israel. It showed that even the most powerful were not above divine law and that justice, although delayed, was certain. Jezebel's judgment serves as a powerful example of the biblical belief in divine retribution. It demonstrates the idea that ultimately, all actions have consequences, and that those who abuse power will eventually face justice. This concept of final accountability before a higher authority is a recurring theme in many religious and ethical traditions. The public nature of the prophecy and its subsequent fulfillment had an additional purpose. It served as a warning to others who might be tempted to follow Jezebel's path. It was a clear demonstration that earthly power, no matter how great, was transient and subject to a higher power. Jezebel's case also illustrates how the actions of leaders can have far-reaching ramifications. Her behavior not only affected her own life, but had lasting consequences for her family and the entire kingdom of Israel. It is a reminder that those in positions of authority carry a special responsibility. The prophecy against Jezebel was not an isolated act, but part of a larger narrative of reform and purification in Israel. Elijah, as a divine spokesperson, was playing a crucial role in reorienting the people back to their fundamental principles. Jezebel's judgment was a necessary step in this process of national renewal. Finally, Jezebel's judgment highlights the tension between human free will and divine sovereignty. Although Jezebel made her choices freely, the prophecy shows that these choices were not beyond the reach of the larger divine plan. It's a narrative that continues to intrigue and challenge readers and scholars to this day. General Jehu emerged as a crucial figure in the biblical narrative, chosen as the divine instrument to execute judgment against the house of Ahab. His rise to power was not by chance, but a result of divine anointing, marking him as the executor of heavenly will. This role placed him at the center of a plot of vengeance and divine justice. Jehu's mission was clear and relentless: eradicate the corrupt lineage that had led Israel into sin. With fierce determination, he began his campaign by executing the son of the infamous queen. This act was not just a demonstration of power, but the fulfillment of a long-pronounced prophecy. Jehu's approach was direct and remorseless, reflecting the gravity of the task entrusted to him. He advanced with the conviction of one acting under divine orders, without hesitation or doubt. His determination was fueled by the belief that he was purifying the nation of a malign influence that had long corrupted it. The final confrontation between Jehu and the fallen queen was laden with symbolism and dramatic irony. As he approached the palace, he encountered not a repentant monarch but a defiant figure, made up and haughty. This encounter symbolized the clash between the old corrupt order and the purifying force Jehu represented. The literal fall of the queen, thrown from her window, marked the end of an era of idolatry and injustice. Jehu, in his role as executor of divine justice, showed no mercy. His action was swift and decisive, fulfilling the prophecy pronounced years earlier by Elijah. The final fate of the queen's body, devoured by dogs, served as a powerful reminder of the consequences of sin and rebellion against divine will. Jehu, witnessing this outcome, saw the fulfillment of the prophetic word, reinforcing his conviction in the legitimacy of his mission. Jehu's ascension to the throne of Israel marked not only a political change, but a spiritual turnaround for the nation. His leadership promised a return to the fundamental values that had been abandoned during the previous reign. It was the beginning of a new chapter in Israel's history, born of violence, but with the promise of renewal. Finally, Jehu's story serves as a reminder of the moral complexity present in biblical narratives. He was simultaneously a liberator and an executor of violence, an instrument of divine justice and a man driven by earthly ambitions. His story continues to provoke reflections on the role of leadership, the nature of divine justice, and the means by which historical change manifests. The story of Naboth's vineyard is a remarkable episode that reveals the depth of corruption in the reign of Ahab and Jezebel. Naboth, a simple landowner, became the pivot of a conflict that exposed the greed and cruelty of Israel's rulers. His refusal to sell the ancestral property triggered a series of tragic events. King Ahab's desire for the vineyard adjacent to his palace was more than a mere whim. It represented the unbridled greed of power, the will to possess what did not rightfully belong to him. Naboth's refusal, based on respect for family traditions and divine law, frustrated the monarch, revealing the limits of his authority. Enter the manipulative queen, orchestrating a diabolical plan to satisfy her husband's desires. The queen's cunning manifested in staging a false trial against Naboth. Using her royal seal, she instructed local authorities to set up a scenario of false accusations, culminating in the unjust condemnation of the innocent landowner. Naboth's judicial murder was an act of blatant tyranny. The malevolent royal consort not only violated human laws but openly defied divine precepts. This event marked a turning point in the biblical narrative, demonstrating how far corrupt power could go to achieve its selfish goals. The usurpation of the vineyard after its rightful owner's death was the pinnacle of injustice. Ahab, instigated by his ruthless wife, took possession of the blood-stained property. This act did not go unnoticed by the divine eyes, provoking a celestial response that would come through the prophet Elijah. The confrontation between Elijah and the royal couple in the stolen vineyard was laden with dramatic tension. The prophet, spokesperson of divine justice, pronounced a curse upon Ahab and his wicked consort. Elijah's words echoed like a divine decree, sealing the fate of the corrupt dynasty. This episode serves as a powerful metaphor for the dangers of abusing power. Naboth's vineyard, more than a physical property, became a symbol of integrity and divine justice facing human corruption. It represents the struggle of the common individual against the oppressive forces of the state. In the end, the story of Naboth's vineyard remains a timeless reminder of the consequences of abusing authority. It shows how seemingly small actions can trigger events of great magnitude, altering the course of history. It's a tale that continues to resonate, warning of the dangers of greed and the importance of justice in any society. The scene of the final confrontation between the fallen queen and the avenging general is filled with dramatic tension and symbolism. Aware of her imminent fate, the former sovereign did not cower. In a final act of defiance, she chose to face her executioner with all the pomp and circumstance of her royal position. The deposed monarch's decision to paint her eyes and arrange her hair was not mere vanity. It was a bold statement, a last act of rebellion against the approaching fate. By presenting herself in all her royal splendor, she mocked fear and defied the divine vengeance that Jehu represented. From her window, the queen looked down, staring at her executioner with disdain. Her posture was that of someone who, even in the face of certain death, refused to bow or show weakness. This final gesture of bravado was characteristic of a woman who had lived challenging norms and conventions. The words she directed at Jehu were sharp as daggers, filled with irony and contempt. Calling him Zimri, murderer of his master, she compared him to a past usurper, questioning his legitimacy and authority. It was a final attempt to undermine her executioner's confidence and perhaps sow doubts among his followers. This verbal confrontation between the queen and the general was more than a personal clash. It represented the clash between two worldviews, two interpretations of power and divine authority. On one side, the stubborn defender of foreign gods. On the other, the self-proclaimed executor of the will of the God of Israel. The deposed queen's defiant attitude in the face of imminent death can be seen as a testament to her strength of character, albeit misguided. Even in her final moments, she remained true to her rebellious and indomitable nature, refusing to show repentance or fear. This last act of defiance, though impressive in its audacity, did not alter the course of prophetic events. The queen's bravado only served to underscore the inevitability of the divine judgment about to be fulfilled. Her end was sealed, no matter how courageous or haughty she appeared. Ultimately, the window scene became iconic, representing the moment when the old regime, personified by the obstinate queen, faced its final downfall. It was the dramatic prelude to the final act of a life marked by ambition, manipulation, and defiance of the established divine order. The moment of the infamous queen's fall came with surprising swiftness. Jehu, the executor of divine will, did not hesitate in the face of the deposed monarch's challenge. With a brief and incisive command, he summoned the palace servants to choose their side in this final conflict. The response of the queen's subordinates was as swift as it was shocking. Those who had bowed to her will for years now turned against her. This sudden shift in loyalty revealed the fragile nature of power based on fear and manipulation. In a matter of moments, the once powerful sovereign found herself abandoned by her closest allies. The act of throwing the queen out of the window was more than a simple execution. It symbolized the literal and metaphorical fall of a corrupt regime. The woman who had long manipulated the fates of a nation now found herself at the mercy of the same forces she once controlled. The impact of the royal body against the ground echoed like a final punctuation mark in the story of tyranny and idolatry she represented. The queen's blood spreading across the palace walls marked the end of an era and the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy. It was a visual testimony of the divine justice that had long awaited manifestation. The scene that followed was shockingly brutal, even by the standards of the time. The horses, involuntary instruments of this divine judgment, trampled the fallen body. This visceral image served as a powerful reminder of the fate reserved for those who defied divine order. Jehu, having witnessed his enemy's fall, showed no remorse or hesitation. His pragmatic attitude toward the queen's death reflected the conviction of a man who saw himself as an instrument of a higher will. For him, this was not an act of personal revenge, but the fulfillment of a sacred duty. The victorious general, after ensuring his adversary's death, turned his attention to more mundane matters. His request for food and drink immediately after the event might seem insensitive to modern eyes, but in that context, it represented the normalization of power after a period of chaos and corruption. It was only after this moment of pause that Jehu remembered the royal status of his victim. His order for the body to be buried with the honors due to a princess shows an interesting complexity in his character. Even amid the execution of a divine mission, he recognized certain social and political conventions. However, when his men went to fulfill the burial order, they found a gruesome scene. From the former queen's body, only fragments remained: the skull, feet, and hands. This shocking discovery was not mere chance, but the literal fulfillment of the prophecy pronounced years before by Elijah. The image of dogs devouring the fallen queen's body served as a grim epilogue to a life marked by ambition and cruelty. It was the final act of a tragedy that had begun with the usurpation of power and ended with the utmost humiliation. Jezebel's fate became a vivid lesson on the consequences of pride and wickedness, echoing through the centuries as a warning to future generations. Jezebel's fall was not just the end of a corrupt queen, but the fulfillment of a long-pronounced prophecy. Elijah's words, which years before had predicted the monarch's fate, now came to dramatic and literal fruition. This outcome served as a powerful testimony to the infallibility of the divine word. The specific details of the prophecy, that dogs would devour Jezebel in Jezreel, were fulfilled with astonishing precision. The discovery of only the queen's skull, feet, and hands was not a macabre coincidence, but the exact realization of the prophetic words. This meticulous fulfillment reinforced the belief in divine intervention in human affairs. The ignominious death of the former sovereign carried deep symbolism. The body devoured by dogs, considered impure animals in Hebrew culture, represented total divine rejection. It was as if even in death, Jezebel was excluded from the community, and the possibility of a dignified rest. This form of divine justice execution served as a powerful reminder of the consequences of sin and rebellion against God. Jezebel's story thus became a living parable about the dangers of pride, idolatry, and the abuse of power. Her fate would echo through the generations as a solemn warning. The narrative of Jezebel's fall offers moral lessons that transcend its historical context. It illustrates how power, when corrupted, leads to the destruction not only of the holder, but affects an entire nation. The Queen's trajectory serves as a case study on the dangers of leadership without ethical principles. One of the most striking lessons of this story is the futility of human arrogance in the face of divine decrees. Jezebel, who for so long seemed invincible in her power, ended up powerless before the final judgment. Her fall reminds us that all earthly authority is temporary and subject to a greater power. The swiftness with which Jezebel's former allies abandoned her offers a reflection on the ephemeral nature of alliances based on fear and intimidation. This aspect of the story serves as a warning against building relationships and power systems founded on coercion and manipulation. The fulfillment of the prophecy also highlights the importance of patience and faith in divine justice. Years passed between Elijah's proclamation and its realization, a reminder that God's timing does not always coincide with human expectations. This perspective offers comfort to those facing injustices, assuring that righteousness will prevail in the end. Jezebel's story in its entirety serves as a call to integrity and moral responsibility, especially for those in leadership positions. It illustrates how individual choices can have far-reaching ramifications, affecting not just personal destiny, but the course of an entire society. Finally, this biblical narrative remains relevant today, offering insights into the nature of power, corruption, and the consequences of our actions. It invites us to reflect on our own values and choices, reminding us of the importance of living with integrity and in harmony with higher ethical principles. Jezebel's narrative, although situated in a distant historical context, offers moral lessons that resonate deeply in our contemporary society. Her story serves as a mirror, reflecting the complexities of power, ambition, and corruption that still permeate current social and political structures. One of the most striking lessons from this saga is the danger of abusing power. Jezebel, in her position of authority, manipulated laws and people for her own selfish ends. This behavior finds unsettling parallels in modern leaders who distort systems for their own benefit, reminding us of the crucial importance of checks and balances in any government structure. The Queen's fall also illustrates how arrogance and belief in one's own invulnerability can blind those in power. Her overconfidence, even in the face of imminent destruction, reflects an attitude that often precedes the downfall of powerful figures in our own era. It's a warning against the hubris that frequently accompanies positions of authority. Jezebel's fate serves as a powerful reminder of the consequences of leading others astray. Her promotion of idolatry and immoral practices not only corrupted her own life, but had a devastating impact on the entire nation. This lesson resonates in an age where influencers and opinion leaders have unprecedented reach through social media. The story also highlights the importance of personal integrity in the face of social and political pressure. Figures like Naboth, who resisted royal power to maintain his integrity, offer an inspiring contrast to Jezebel's corruption. This example of moral courage remains relevant in a world where it is often easier to yield to pressure than to uphold principles. The speed with which Jezebel's allies abandoned her at the moment of her fall offers a reflection on the nature of alliances based on fear and convenience. This dynamic finds echoes in contemporary power networks, where loyalties can shift quickly with political tides. It's a reminder of the importance of building relationships based on shared values, not transient interests. The fulfillment of the prophecy against Jezebel underscores the idea that actions have consequences even if not immediate. In a culture of instant gratification, this narrative reminds us that the effects of our choices may manifest over time, encouraging a long-term perspective in our ethical and moral decisions. Jezebel's story also raises questions about the role of religion and spirituality in the public sphere. Her promotion of foreign cults in Israel mirrors contemporary debates about the separation of church and state and the impact of religious beliefs on public policies. It invites us to reflect on the balance between religious freedom and social cohesion. For leaders and aspiring influencers, Jezebel's narrative serves as a case study on the dangers of power not tempered by wisdom and compassion. It illustrates how leadership divorced from ethical principles can lead to the destruction not only of the leader but of an entire society. It's a call to responsibility and integrity in the exercise of authority. Finally, Jezebel's story challenges us to examine our own lives and choices. It invites us to consider what kind of legacy we are building, what influence we exert on others, and whether our actions align with higher ethical principles. In an era of moral and ethical complexities, this ancient narrative continues to offer valuable insights for navigating the challenges of our own time. Reflect for a moment. What kind of influence do you exert in your social circle? Do your actions inspire others to be better or lead them down questionable paths? Remember, each of us has the power to be a Jezebel or a Naboth in our spheres of influence. And what about the power you hold, whether at home, at work, or in the community? How do you use it? For your own benefit or for the common good? The story shows that a person's true character is revealed not when they are down, but when they are at the top. Think about the alliances you form. Are they based on shared values or momentary convenience? Jezebel's allies' loyalty vanished at the critical moment. What kind of relationships are you cultivating? How do you deal with the injustices you observe around you? Do you remain silent out of fear or convenience? Or do you have the courage to stand up, even if it means facing consequences? And what about your integrity? When confronted with difficult choices, do you stay true to your principles, or do you give in to the pressure of circumstances? These are not easy questions, but they are crucial. Jezebel's story challenges us to be better, to make wiser choices, to use our influence for good. So, what will you do with this knowledge? How will this ancient story change your modern life? The power to make a difference is in your hands. Remember, every choice we make, every action we take, shapes not only our destiny but impacts those around us. Let's learn from the mistakes of the past to build a better future. Are you ready to apply these lessons in your life? To continue exploring these and other fascinating stories that can transform your perspective and enrich your journey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Together, we can unravel the mysteries of the past and build a wiser and more compassionate future.